Hi, this is James Zhang, and today we are here with Don Way. And Don has started and built one of the largest property management companies here in DFW. And so I'm really excited to have her on here today. I mean, the last count, the last sort of look on the website, I had close to 17,000 units, probably close to 100 properties that you guys manage. And so I wanted to have you on today really to share your story and talk about sort of how you got into this business, but then also talk about sort of what we're experiencing now. So maybe start there, give us sort of like the 1 minute origin story of Don Way and sort of how you got into this business.
Sure. I was born in Rhode Island. I lived there until I was 30 years old. I had married someone that was in the military, and then I started traveling a lot. But growing up, my dad was a truck driver. My mom was an iron worker. And then they got their real estate license when I was 16. And so that naturally drew me to that. However, I wanted to go to nursing school. I was heading into the Navy, but they wouldn't guarantee me my nursing school. So I decided to go on my own. And had applied to Ohio State, was accepted, and then life got interrupted because I ended up doing some classes at the local community college so that I could have an edge at the end of the day when I got to Ohio State. And in order to fund my vision, I started working in real estate, and I started a part-time job as a receptionist. So I actually started in this job as a
Oh,
receptionist
wow. Okay.
for a management company up in New England. And then working with my dad, we were an amazing team. I received my license, he had his, and he would do the selling, I would do the listing. And it was just a great partnership. And the broker I worked for was an appraiser. And so I would make extra money on the side by typing up his reports and doing some legwork for him, which then just lent years later, my propensity for spotting trends and looking at properties and eyeing them the way that, a lender would look at them or an appraiser would look at them. So it's been a pretty wild ride. I ended up in Florida for about 5 years in the military, and then was in Texas in 1995, where for the first time I went out on site as a manager and then worked my way up to a regional and then a VP of operations, and then ultimately was given an amazing opportunity by David Moore and KC at NightVest to take their third party out and start Citygate Property Group, which is what I did.
So, I mean, did you manage their properties under the Citygate brand when you took it out? Is that what happened? And then you started doing more third party as people sort of saw the success. I mean, if people who are not based in Texas, I mean, NightVest, they essentially in the last downturn bought, I don't know, probably 10,000 units pretty quickly in the last downturn. And then sort of you managed that whole process and then sort of grew the portfolio from there. Is that how it worked? Or maybe give a little bit more.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, James. Actually, they had their owned assets, and then they, as a byproduct of selling those assets, people would ask them to keep on managing them. So it became third-party management, in which they needed a broker for. You have to have your license in order to do third-party management for another owner. And so I was able to come in as their VP of operations and take over that third party. But it was never really in their heart to own a third party management company because there's a lot of stress that comes with it, believe it or not. And so they afforded me the opportunity to be able to do that. And so that's how the story began. They had their own assets, and then they had a third party division that they needed somebody to watch those properties on. And then they ultimately wanted to disband that. And then they came to me and said, would you be interested in, starting your own company and doing this? And it wasn't on my 5 or 10 year plan at the time, but it became very quickly what I had a heart to do.
So how would you recommend, I mean, this is a question I get a lot, is how does an investor, if it's a small property, they might say, all right, I'm going to self-manage a 20 unit deal or a 25 unit deal. But once it gets into the 75, 100, 150 unit deals and plus, they have to choose a management company. How would you recommend investors choose a management company?
It's all about relationship. You have to trust the person that you're partnering with, even if there's no money exchange as far as that manager, that management company is coming in as a partner to put money down, equity in the deal. Um, the truth is that you want a partner in the fact that they're going to be there for you. They're going to solve your problems. They're going to let you sleep, while the property manager can't. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to make money for people, to solve their problems, and to let them sleep when we can't sleep.
Well, we always like to say at the beginning of the transaction, your lender is your biggest partner, right? We're bringing like 75% of the money into the deal. You're bringing 25% of the equity. But I would say after the loan closes, we're still a big part of that. But the property management company is the guys with really the feet on the ground and really making the deal happen or not. And so, I mean, when you first started, obviously you didn't start with 15,000 units or 17,000 units. How did you grow from, 5,000 units and then just take on, I was just on sort of your LinkedIn page, and it seems like you guys take over a new property every week, or it just is consistent. How have you been able to sort of grow from, I think a lot of people get stuck even at 500 or 1,000 units, and then they just sort of get stuck there. How have you grown and scaled the business? I mean, it's been remarkable.
Yeah, I think a lot has to do, James, with the fact that, I partnered with Pat Smits, who's my business partner. It was an amazing partnership right from the very start. Didn't know him. We were introduced by a mutual friend. But when we started Citygate, we started with the end in mind. And both of us have an entrepreneurial spirit. So some things just come easy. And one of the things that came easy was relationship and just putting it out there, like what our vision was. So we started, even when we had 1,200 units, that's where we actually started, was 1,200 units. And then it's built from there. And we have become, at the end of the day, very selective with who we do business with, as so should a client. They should most definitely know who they're getting into a partnership with on that. But we started with a marketing department. We started with the training. Now, albeit, marketing and training were one person at the time, and now we have a department that has 5 people in it that actually service the sites. So even from IT to all of the things that we did, we run with Resman software for all of our portfolio. And it's not that we wouldn't entertain another platform. It's just that it's so cost effective. It's so easy to use. And I'm not trying to push a product. That's not my goal. But we decided early on that we would have people that actually knew that program in-house, so that we didn't have to depend on the provider to be our support. And so we have such a robust team, like within corporate, that is ultimately just, it's the brains of the operation. Pat and I, of course we started it, but it's the people that are underneath the umbrella that really make it work.
So it sounds like you guys invested in some systems up front, knowing that this thing is going to grow from here.
Yes.
Is there anything, whether it's looking for a partner or even hiring these people to come onto your team, is there any specific characteristics that you look for? Are you hiring for that specific role, or do you usually look like, can this person grow into become like the department head of HR or marketing or technology? Maybe give us some characteristics that you look for when hiring these people or potentially partnering with them.
Sure, and just to mention, we absolutely promote from within. That is just something that both Pat and I have always been passionate about, because we do. When we're looking at people, like when I'm looking to hire a manager, I want to know that that person can someday be an area manager. That way I know that the multi-million-dollar asset they're sitting on, they're looking at it from a different view. They're coming up 10,000 feet and they're looking at it, rather than just like struggling with what the boots on the ground have to struggle with. And if they can catch the vision of the client and they understand what the client's goals are, so a lot of it is communication, right? We communicate from the top down and from the bottom up. And I think that that is something that a client should consider is, yes, who's on their team, and how is that manager going to find those team members. And I think it's because of our relationships that we have from prior companies that we worked for, that people want to work for Citygate. They understand that our mentality is not just, here's the keys, go forth, do well. We want to pour into them and raise them up to recognize the potential that they have inside of them.
What do you think? So right now, let's talk about, right now we're in, April 2020, and, the COVID-19 has definitely put a super, super focus on collections, on management, on leasing, on resident retention, all those things. I guess give us the little, maybe a couple minutes on what you guys are doing on your properties, besides the standard requirements of the state. Is there anything that you guys are doing on your properties to maybe make this a time that you can actually lease units, and make this a time where you can get to better know the tenants? Maybe share any insights that you guys are doing.
Sure. This was such uncharted water for everybody. I have to give a shout out to the National Apartment Association and the local apartment association, AAGD and AATC, and then the state, TAA, because they really helped us form plans and form communication that allowed us to really reach out in a way that I feel like the industry that could have been impacted in such a major way really didn't get impacted as much as we anticipated. Because when we first started, we were very nervous. We were like, oh my gosh, is it going to be 50% of the people who don't rent? You see these rent strikes, you see all these things on Facebook. And so I've had to unplug from a lot of my my media that I typically listen to, because I have to stay positive, right, for
Sure.
everybody.
Yeah.
But the team themselves, we thought we're going to have people that aren't going to want to work. So early on, we closed the offices, which was part of what our peers were doing in the industry as well, where we didn't have the foot traffic coming in. So we then had to turn to other things that would allow us to make sure that the leasing velocity kept up. So I have to say, number one, our marketing team is amazing, but we started doing Matterports, which are snippet videos that you can put on your website so that people can actually see virtual tours of the actual product that you have available. Not just a model, but like different apartments. And so it really started. One of the weakest parts in management when you are talking, and it doesn't matter what property management company you're talking to, they're going to tell you that follow up, people be using their social media really as a tool was sometimes before this harder to get people to do, because they were too busy with working with people walking in the office, things that would happen. And now they've had to turn to those tools. And so we use a program called Knock, and it records calls. It also tracks everywhere, all of your mediums that are coming in, where your traffic's coming from. And all of those numbers, surprisingly, James, have escalated. Like we have 92% penetration where people are engaging on Knock to call people back and doing virtual tours, where before it might have been 70%. And we are seeing more leasing velocity now than we did when the doors were open. So, it's been pretty neat.
Have you seen, how has your communication been with investors sort of pre-COVID and after COVID? I've seen some general partners have taken the stance I'm going to over communicate during this time. I'm going to share my collection numbers, daily, weekly, versus just sort of the monthly rhythm that, in the good times, everybody just expected 95% occupancy and, 1% bad debt. But in this market, how are you guys communicating with your investors? And then also, is there anything maybe, you manage so many different properties, so many different owners that you work with. What has the feedback been from them also?
Well, initially, I mean, everybody was really nervous. So both Pat and I decided early on that we were going to over communicate ourselves. I wanted to make sure that our clients knew on a weekly basis, if not 3 times a week, that, you know, these are the initiatives that we're taking. This is how we're moving forward. These are the plans that we have. And so I think it helped us to be able to communicate with them and them communicate with us. I mean, it did put on extra reporting that we didn't have before. And truth be known, most of the reports are redundant. We can tell you, you know, how much is collected in the percentage without having to do another spreadsheet. But we realized that it's very important to the client to want to know those things and to see it in a different way. And if that's the small effort that we can do is add another report to bring comfort, then I felt that that was the right thing to do, and so did Pat. So that's what we've been doing, but we've over communicated as well. Our calls really haven't changed, James. We have weekly and bi-weekly. We don't recommend we have weekly calls, but it just happens sometimes being that way. And we can get to that a little later on the philosophy that I feel about that. But yeah, I think it's been a great communication time for clients and management companies.
How would you compare sort of, I mean, the last downturn to this one so far? I mean, I don't know if we felt it yet on the apartment side. I've seen it on the transaction side in terms of buyers and sellers being, you know, 10, 15% apart on pricing. But I guess in the last recession versus this one, any similarities, differences that you've seen so far?
No, again, I think that there's been enough that's been put in place to try to help ease that we really haven't felt the impact. We're really doing well between, we have some properties that maybe are 85% collected that used to be, you know, 97% collected. To we have some properties that haven't seen an impact at all. This is different because it's not the price of the apartment that's driving people to not rent. It's the uncertainty of times that really people want to stay settled. So we do still, like I said before, we still have great leasing velocity, but at the same time, we also have people that are coming back and not wanting to move. And so we're able to retain people that were originally on notice. So I think it's still too early in this cycle to see where exactly it's impacted us. And I would think that you probably see it more on the sales side because we've been impacted where we were writing a pro forma or a projection like, you know, 20 a week. And now we're, you know, down to not doing anything because everybody's just waiting it out to see what happens.
So that was the next question I was going to go to was, okay, if somebody came to you now and said, look, the person's in distress and they just want to get out of their deal. They don't want to get foreclosed on. We haven't seen that yet, but it's going to be in the next couple of months. How would you recommend they underwrite sort of year one or year two? I know this is getting nuanced, but this is the stuff that I do. Is how would you just tell them keep the rent flat and just, you know, try to retain tenants? Like what type of rent projections would you have for that person?
James, I think I have to get out my crystal ball for that one.
Yeah.
However, I think what I would do is just, you know, focus on the expense portion of it.
Okay.
And, you know, a property is going to be, the expenses are going to be what they're going to be. The nuances are going to be in the income and what the market's going to bear. And I would say that right now, if somebody were to come to me today, I wouldn't change anything that I'm doing. I would still probably project for rental increases, but I wouldn't be as aggressive as I was in the past. We have been advising our clients to like maybe pare back on their rehabs in their apartments until we know exactly what's going to happen. So it's just being prudent, and because it is so uncertain, making sure that we're not like over our skis and trying to recommend, yeah, this is $100 rent bump, this is a $75 rent bump, because we really don't know that. We'd probably be, as we typically are, cautious, more cautious than an investor typically is.
Do you have any advice? I mean, you know, investors are sort of locked in their homes or, you know, 6 feet away from most people. What advice would you give for owners out there like what should they be looking at to improve their property right now? Whether that's working with their property management company differently, whether that's changing something on their property. What is there, like sort of a checklist? Like if, I sent you a deal today and said, hey, Don, and people do this to me all the time. Hey, James, take a look at this property. Can you tell me what's wrong? And I just look at my two things that I look at are I can look at your rent roll and your T12, and I can sort of get the story based on the numbers, right? But if someone came to you and say, hey, Don, I got this property, I want you guys to come take it on, what is the first thing that you would do, or sort of maybe the top 5 things you would look at on your property or that property to really sort of start diving into it?
Well, we get the master story, which is, nothing new under the sun. I think you've heard me say this before. It's, people, product, price, and promotion. And if all 4 are firing on all pistons, somebody wouldn't be coming to me and saying, what can I do with this property to maybe improve it? It's typically one of those 4 things that have an issue. So, we look at area, we look at all the things that can impact. And, in addition to the 4 Ps, I always want to know if there's code issues that have to be addressed, because then I know how deep our relationship has to go and who we have to pull into the deal in order to make it look like it's something that somebody, number 1, wants to purchase, and number 2, if it's a current management company and they're looking to change, I don't have a magic wand. So I always want to make sure that I am looking at the deal, and not just saying, again, getting over my skis and saying, oh yeah, I can do so much better, because sometimes it's not just the management company. Sometimes there's other factors that come in. And if I can ever evaluate something for someone, I don't have a problem with doing that with no strings attached, because that's what I do. I love to see things turn around and prosper and help investors recognize, what they get into investing for.
Can
Does that
you
make sense?
dig? Yes. Can you dig into the 4 Ps for me and for somebody who hasn't heard that before? Because I've
Sure.
heard it before, but I would love to hear it again, maybe in the context of today's world that we're living in.
Sure. So a lot of times when I'm analyzing a property, I will go in and look at the people. So let's start with the people first. You have to have the right people on the ground that love their product. So I wait to hear for trigger things that send a red flag up for me. If somebody is not in love with their product, they're not going to be able to sell it. If that person is in the wrong seat, then they're not going to be able to really function at the highest capacity. So we look at the people, and does the team have synergy? And sometimes it doesn't make somebody not a good worker. It just means that they may need to be transferred to another property where they have more synergy with other people and they love their product. So people is where it starts, and we listen to phone calls. If you came to me and said, don't I have this deal, vet it out for me. One of the first things I would do is send it to my marketing department and ask them to call and do a phone shop, and act like they are looking for an apartment and see what happens, or in prior days, you could walk into a property and you could physically shop it and see, do they stand up? Do they greet you? Are you put on hold? Is the person that's really listening, that's talking to you, are they engaged? If they're not engaging to me, they're not going to be engaging to another prospect. And so that's what I mean by people. As far as price, is the product priced out of the market? Are you the highest net effective rent? And do you have, I've never had a problem with being the highest price, because we can like sell people on the fact, and it's not selling, it's being genuine. It's giving people the product, but also giving them the community that they're looking for and making it something where there's relationship driven. But if the price is just too high, if somebody's trying to get $1,700 for an apartment, and somebody can go out and get a house for $1,500, and then the rest of the market is down around $1,500, then I know I need to modify the price And it doesn't necessarily have to come in a way of reducing or offering a special or a concession. Sometimes you just have to reduce the floor plan. And we don't look at it like, gosh, you're 87% occupied and, you want to be 95 and all of your floor plans, we're going to just like reduce. No, we're looking at the target, right? Which floor plan do you have the issue with? And then we're going to assess maybe a concession or special to that specific floor plan. So it's not like across the board, anybody that comes in gets $500 off of their first month's rent. So it's a little bit more measured and targeted on that. So that's the pricing part of it. And then the product, I can't tell you how many times I visit a site and they're not able to, get ahead of the game because they don't have the ready product. And when you walk it, I mean, if I come in today and I want to rent, I don't want to wait 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks to move in until that team on the ground has the ability to make ready the apartment. So I will recommend to a client, let's get a make ready crew. Let's get 10 apartments ready so that we have product, so that the leasing velocity is there. The price is great. The promotion's fantastic. We just need the product. So that's one element of product. And then there's other elements. Does the property have curb appeal? Is the apartment that I'm looking at actually really ready? Because if it's not, and you're showing it, that's going to put a negative into someone who's going into your apartment and then they're going down the road and seeing this stellar product. And then there is the promotion part of it. And so that's where we really focus on our social media. I think that that's somewhere that we really excel. We are on the cutting edge. Dawn Waye isn't, but our marketing team and our millennials are, and they are constantly pushing things out through Facebook and they're taking advantage of the products that are out there that allow us to be able to have a far-reaching grasp on the client, on the people that we want to bring in.
Well, thank you for going through that. I have firsthand experience with all of these. I mean, I walk a lot of properties. I've called properties. I mean, I'm amazed that you call properties and no one ever picks up, or it just goes to voicemail, or it's busy, and the product. I mean, I've seen, and maybe you could add on to this, but I've seen general partners just go walk properties and look at, all right, what's my vacants that I have on the property? And they have 10 vacants, but then 5 of them aren't even ready to lease. It's like, well, what are we doing here? Like, how are we going to ever get these leased? But yeah, the price and promotion for sure. Right now, that's the thing that's going to get people in the door. And that's how people, I think, are going to become more accustomed to leasing units going forward. And especially, as we move forward through this. So I greatly appreciate all the advice today and going through the 4 Ps. That definitely helps. What's the best way for people to reach out, whether they have questions or pro formas, or, they want to talk to you about maybe moving over to Citygate? What's the best way for people to reach out to you, Don?
Sure. My email, it's very simple. It's my first initial D and my last name, Waye, and then at citygatepg.com. We also have a Citygate Cares at citygatepg.com and a hello at citygatepg.com. But my cell phone number, and if I'm free to give that, I'll be happy to, because I don't mind people calling me.
Sure.
It's 214-223-6090, and that will ring directly to me. It's my cell. I may not answer it right at first, but I promise I will definitely call back.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today, and be safe out there.
Thank you, James. I appreciate you so much.